We all know what The Bookseller is. The Bookseller is a well-known publishing industry magazine, and here to tell us more about the behind the scenes is Caroline. Caroline is a deputy features editor, and I'm so excited to share this interview with you. Hope you find it useful and enjoy.
Hi, I'm Caroline Carpenter. I'm Deputy Features Editor at The Bookseller, which is a trade magazine for the book industry. And The Bookseller also runs awards and conferences. I chair one of those awards, which is the YA Book Prize. It aims to recognise the best young adult fiction from the UK and Ireland. And outside of my job, I am a co-host on a podcast for adults that love children's books, which is called Down the Rabbit Hole. So as Deputy Features Editor, there's a real range of things that I do. I will sometimes be pitching features ideas, sometimes be researching them and talking to people, interviewing them, sometimes be writing them up, obviously. I work across all of our features content throughout the year. Some of the big things that we do are our Rising Stars feature, which looks at the up and coming people in the publishing industry, book selling, libraries as well. I also work on our Bookseller 150 list, which is a list of the most influential people across the book trade that we do every year. I lead on some of our projects, so we do some country and regional focuses, and I lead on the ones for Scotland, Wales and the north of England, which involves speaking to and meeting with a range of publishers, booksellers, literary agents and literary organisations in those areas, talking to them, find out the exciting things that are happening in those areas, and then coming up with a content plan to cover as much of that as I can in a dedicated issue of the magazine every year. As chair of the YA Book Prize, it's also really varied. The prize has just partnered with Edinburgh Book Festival. It's going to run for about half a year, so it's quite busy during that time, either reading and reviewing submissions, choosing the shortlist, working with the shortlisted publishers and authors to promote the shortlist, and then choosing the winner and going to Edinburgh International Book Festival and presenting the winner with their award there. So it's a real mixture of roles and responsibilities that are connected with that. Some event stuff, some writing stuff, some project management stuff. Really interesting and quite fun. It's a real mixture. I went to university and did English and creative writing. I always wanted to be an author. When I finished my degree, I knew that being an author was not a paid job in terms of getting a salary every month, and I didn't really have very much work experience. I just got a job in admin, and while I was doing that, a friend asked me to help out with some freelance editing work, which I did and I really enjoyed, and I realised that that kind of worked really well with my skill set, with the language skills, and I just sort of put two and two together and thought something that could use my language and editing skills and something that would combine that with my love of books would maybe be the publishing industry. Did a couple of placements, and one of those placements actually led me to writing a book. After that, I was just applying for jobs, not really having much luck. I ended up working for a newspaper company for a year, but on the advertising side. So I was selling advertising space in the newspapers and website, which was useful experience, but I knew it wasn't really for me. So after about a year of that, I thought I'll give book publishing one more try. Around that time when I was looking, there were just a few opportunities via a website called Creative Access, and I applied for some of the opportunities there and then got the one at the Bookseller, and I've been at the Bookseller ever since. So that was just over 8 years ago. I started as editorial assistant at the Bookseller for the first year, and then I got kept on as staff writer working in the news team, and then I moved over to work as web editor on the social media and website, and then I moved over to become deputy features editor working on features. In between, I covered the children's editor role for a year as our children's editor was on maternity leave, so that was covering children's coverage in the magazine, which is something I'm passionate about and something that I'm going to be doing more of going forward. Something that's obviously quite important for my role is good writing skills, also attention to detail and good communication skills, because quite often you're reaching out to people and asking to interview them. Organisation skills as well, because I often have to meet deadlines. With the magazine, there's really strict weekly deadlines. We have a really busy publishing calendar. There's something happening every month, if not every week. So you kind of have to keep on top of that and look ahead and know what's coming up. Project management, I would say as well, because the issues of the magazine that I lead on and the YA Book Prize, which I lead on, there's a lot of moving parts happening, whether that's working with the commercial team to make sure that in those issues of the magazine there's enough advertising space to go along with the content, working with the social media team to make sure that everything's going to be shared online. With the YA Book Prize, there's lots of working with partners and publishers and authors. You have to be really organised, talking to people and keeping on top of all of that. Another thing, I suppose, is being creative as well. For example, with the YA Book Prize, I've been involved with it from the start. I worked on the social media first of all, and I think my work on that has really helped boost the prize, just being quite imaginative with how we use our social media and trying to be quite fun with it, which is quite a different tone from what the main Bookseller social media was at the time. The thing that I wish I knew sooner about my job or the industry was really just that it existed. Like I said, I went to uni and I really didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted to do when I finished. And it took me a while to kind of find publishing and find my way to publishing. Even though I'd always loved books, I knew, I guess, in some vague way that there was an industry that made the books happen. I didn't know anything about it or how it worked or how to get into it. So I just really wish that I had known that, I suppose. One of my favourite parts is working on the YA Book Prize. I'm quite passionate about YA, so it's great to be able to work on something that you're truly interested in. Another reason is that it's always really well received. There's always been a lot of support on Twitter, from bloggers, on social media. There's been the opportunity to go to events. So the prize used to be partnered with Hay Festival, and I've been to the Young Adult Literature Convention and other events like that. And it's just really lovely to see the amount of enthusiasm that young adult readers have. So that's a really nice part of the job. Another thing has been meeting and interviewing authors. I've got to go to book launches of people like Jacqueline Wilson, and I've interviewed Malorie Blackman and people that were heroes of mine when I was a child. So that's just really surreal sometimes and pretty amazing to me. Another thing is the events that I've got to go to. Working at the Bookseller, I get to go to all of the conferences that the company hosts every year. So that covers children's publishing, the future of publishing, marketing and publicity. It's great to be able to be at those events, hear about some of the most exciting things happening in the industry, get to meet people. It feels like you're kind of at the heart of everything, so that's great. Another thing that has been a real perk of working at the Bookseller has been I've been able to do some travelling. That's ranged from going to Scotland to speak to publishers there, and Wales, and going to Hay Festival for the YA Book Prize over the last few years before the pandemic, to going to Bologna Book Fair in Italy. I got to go to Sharjah Book Fair in the United Arab Emirates. Probably the most exciting was I got to go to Indonesia for a press trip there when they were the guest of honour at London Book Fair. So that was pretty amazing. Not everyone gets to do that. Kind of on that note, I guess another good thing about my job is the parties that I've got to go to. That's been a lot of fun. The most challenging part of my job, I think, having to meet the strict deadlines, that can be challenging, especially when you're working with other people externally, because you have to chase people a lot, which I can sometimes feel a bit awkward about, but it has to be done. There are just sometimes these real crunch points of the year when you've got a few different things happen at once. London Book Fair and Bologna Book Fair, for example, they're quite close together, so it can be a really busy period. I just have to really try and keep on top of everything. But yeah, it's always quite an intense time of year. That would be one of the most challenging things. The Bookseller has been around since 1858 in some form, so that's pretty cool. I think it's got a real long history, and I think everyone who works there is quite aware of that. Old copies of the magazine are in the British Library, and every now and then we will get a letter, normally handwritten, with someone saying, "Oh, do you have a copy of this article from 1974?" and you're kind of like, oh gosh, you might try and find it in the archive. That's something I think that's quite cool about the Bookseller. We got bought about a year and a half ago by a company called The Stage, which is the theatre industry's trade newspaper, and that's also been around for a really long time, since 1880, so in good company there. Someone pretty exciting that I got to interview, and that was Sarah Jessica Parker, Carrie Bradshaw herself. That was really surreal. We just got approached at the Bookseller about interviewing a new publishing imprint that she'd set up in the United States, and so I went to meet her in a hotel and just interviewed her, and she actually knew who the Bookseller were and said she was a big fan of the Bookseller, so it was all very strange, but in a good way. The Bookseller is quite a small company. I don't know of a whole lot of people who've been in my role specifically, but if we're talking about people who've been in the editorial department at the Bookseller more generally, there's a real range. A lot of people have gone freelance and they will, write for various outlets within the books and culture and arts world. They also sometimes work with publishers and proofread things for publishers and do sensitivity reads and things like that. Also host events. Some have gone on to work for publishers. Some people have just gone on to just completely different things. So working for the Civil Service, becoming a teacher, or possibly going on to other magazines or newspapers or websites. One thing I've learned about the publishing industry, well, I've learned lots of things about the publishing industry, and that's a real benefit of being at the Bookseller, but I suppose one of the main things is that it is an industry. There's lots and lots of people across lots of different departments making things happen, and at the end of the day, a lot of the time decisions are made because of business reasons, which I think is important for people to understand. But at the heart of that, I think there is a lot of passion as well. I do feel like most of the people I meet, if not everyone, they're there because they love books and they want to share those with people. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but there's loads of positives about the publishing industry. I said that I've learned a lot about the publishing industry, but I still feel like there's a lot that I don't know. Sometimes I come across people's job roles and I think, I don't really know what that means. I don't really know what they do, which is why it's great to have videos like this. Probably don't know enough about the stuff that happens behind the scenes in publishing, things like production. I mean, every now and then I come across some really interesting parts of the industry that I think not enough people know about. One example of that is Booksource. They're a book distributor based in Scotland. One of the things that they do is they work with retail outlets like Urban Outfitters, garden centres, places like that, and they curate bookshelves for them basically. So they will help them pick the best books to sell in those places. That kind of thing I always find really interesting when you come across something about the industry that you don't know and you learn something new about it. Read the Bookseller. That's not just plugging my company, but no, I think it is important to be up to date on the news, the big industry news, and know what's happening, know what the trends are, any big changes in companies. Like just before I started working at the Bookseller, Penguin and Random House had merged, which is obviously like a massive thing that had happened in the industry. So just be aware of those things. Along those lines, read widely. At least try to be aware of like the big books that are out that year across a range of genres. And in terms of the writing, I would recommend writing a blog, working for your student newspaper, things like that, things that I didn't do that looking back I wish I had done, and maybe that would have helped me kind of get into the industry a bit quicker. Oh, that's so hard. Well, because I am chair of the YA Book Prize, one book that I'm going to recommend that everyone reads is Noughts and Crosses by Malorie Blackman. If you don't know about it already, where have you been? It celebrated its 20th anniversary last year. It's a YA book that's set in an alternate version of Britain, where there's like a race reversal. So white people are underprivileged and black people are kind of the ruling class. It's loosely based on Romeo and Juliet, so there is a love story at the heart of it. But I think what's really impressive is the world building that Malorie Blackman creates, and it gives you a real insight, maybe a different perspective. So I definitely would recommend that. Well, one of my favourite books is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. Yeah, I just love that book. It's speculative fiction, slightly futuristic world, but quite similar to our own. It asks some really big questions. I think yeah, probably the thing that both those books have in common is like human relationships are at the heart of them, but then they also do ask really big questions about society and about, in the case of Never Let Me Go, I guess the big question is, what does it mean to be human? Hope that was helpful, guys. Bye!